Breaking news. Just hours ago, President Trump announced that Vladimir Putin has agreed to a one-week pause on all strikes against Kyiv.
And the reason given?
Record-setting cold. It is Friday, January 30th, 2026. The temperature in Ukraine has just plummeted to minus 30 degrees Celsius.
But, before anyone breathes a sigh of relief, we need to talk about what's actually happening on the ground.
Exactly. Because while politicians are patting themselves on the back, the missiles have not stopped flying.
Not at all.
If you support the defense of democracy and want to stay ahead of the curve on global security, make sure you subscribe to Defense Reports. We are your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports.
We really appreciate the support.
I'm Alex. Join me with Arya in the latest podcast by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover this so-called energy truce.
And so-called is definitely the right phrase for it.
This deep dive is going to take you behind the curtain of what might be, it might be the most deceptive week in modern diplomatic history.
Yeah.
We aren't just looking at headlines.
No, we're looking at the massive disconnect between what's being said in Washington and, well, what's exploding in Odessa.
We're going to unpack this ambiguity trap, why the Kremlin is already openly contradicting the White House less than 24 hours after the announcement.
And we have to get into the Board of Peace, this new, almost surreal global organization that it effectively charges $1 billion for a seat at the table.
$1 billion. And we'll explain why that is terrifying our European allies.
Then there are the secret negotiations happening right now as we speak in Abu Dhabi.
Right. Reports of a land deal involving 5 Russian generals and U.S. envoys. And they're proposing to trade Ukrainian territory for an $800 billion prosperity agreement.
It's a lot to process.
It is. Our mission today is to cut through all that diplomatic noise and really analyze what this shift towards transactional diplomacy actually means for Ukraine's survival and for European security.
It's a heavy slate, for sure, but I think we have to start with the immediate reality on the ground. The weather.
Right. Winter storm fern.
Yeah.
We complain about the cold when we have to scrape ice off the windshield, but Ukraine is facing minus 30 Celsius. That's minus 22 Fahrenheit.
It's bone-chilling. And in a war zone, extreme weather isn't just an environmental factor. It's a force multiplier for the aggressor.
A weapon.
It is. The sources we're looking at are calling this the weaponization of winter. Russia has been systematically targeting thermal power plants for months, just waiting for this exact moment.
For the cold to hit its peak.
Exactly. They know that when it hits minus 30, taking out the grid, it isn't just about turning off the lights. It freezes pipes. It destroys sewage infrastructure. It literally makes cities uninhabitable.
It's a calculated attempt to freeze the civilian population into submission. So against that backdrop, we get this announcement from the cabinet meeting yesterday. President Trump says he personally asked Putin to hold fire for a week because of the extraordinary cold.
And he said Putin agreed. Trump called it a very good thing.
On the surface, if you just saw the tweet or the clip, it looks like a diplomatic win, a humanitarian pause.
But that's where we have to be so critical of the narrative.
Yeah.
Because almost immediately after that announcement, the Kremlin pushed back.
Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesperson.
Right. He came out and said, well, actually, we only agreed to a pause until Sunday. That's February 1st.
Wait, today is Friday, so that's not a week. That's barely 48 hours.
Exactly. It's a direct contradiction of the president's statement. And Peskov's phrasing was so chillingly bureaucratic. He said the pause was to create favorable conditions.
What does that even mean?
It's vague. It's what intelligence analysts are calling the ambiguity trap. Russia makes this non-committal promise. It appears cooperative. It allows Trump to claim a victory to his domestic audience.
While the Russian military just keeps going.
Almost unabated.
And unabated is the right word, because we have breaking news from this morning, January 30th. Despite this truce, Ukraine faced a massive aerial assault overnight.
It wasn't just a skirmish. It was a swarm. We are talking about 111 drones and an Iskander-M ballistic missile launched at Ukrainian cities.
An Iskander-M, that's a high-precision weapon. You don't fire that by accident.
No, you don't. That is a deliberate, high-value strike. And look, Ukrainian air defenses are performing absolute miracles. They intercepted 80 of those drones.
80 out of 111. That's incredible.
It is. But some got through. 15 locations were hit. Energy infrastructure in Odessa and Dnipropetrovsk was damaged.
So think about that. While diplomats are talking about a pause, People in Odessa are waking up to explosions, and their heat is turning off in minus 30-degree weather.
It's a total bait and switch.
It feels like it. You promise a pause, you get the headlines, but the drones keep flying. It begs the question, why would Russia even agree to a pause at all, even a fake one? What's the strategic gain for them?
Strategy is the key word there. The Institute for the Study of War has a very compelling analysis on this. They suggest this truce serves a very specific tactical purpose for Russia.
And it's not humanitarian.
Oh, not at all. Their track record proves that. No, they need a brief operational pause to upgrade their tech.
What kind of upgrade?
Starlink. We know Russia has been illicitly acquiring terminals through third-party networks. The intelligence suggests they're now trying to integrate those terminals directly into their drone swarms.
That sounds dangerous.
It's incredibly dangerous for the defenders. If they succeed, it improves the range and accuracy of their drones significantly. It also makes them much harder to jam.
So need a few days.
A few days of a lower tempo to field test this integration before they launch their planned spring offensive in Pokrovsk.
So this humanitarian truce is actually just a pit stop for the Russian military to make their weapons more lethal. That is, cynical doesn't even begin to cover it.
It's the definition of modern hybrid warfare. You use the diplomatic channel to buy time and cover for the military channel. But this deception is, it's just the tip of the iceberg. The diplomatic machinery being built behind this truce, that's even more unusual. We have to unpack the Board of Peace.
This was the part of the research pile that really made me do a double take. The Board of Peace. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel. Or maybe a satire.
It does. It was launched just a week ago, January 22nd at Davos.
But it's real.
Oh, the paperwork is very real. This is an international organization designed explicitly to bypass the United Nations. And the charter names Donald Trump as Chairman for Life, with veto power over all resolutions.
Chairman for life. That's a title usually reserved for, well, dictators, not democratic leaders. And the entry fee.
Well, I thought that. A permanent seat costs a cool $1 billion.
A literal membership fee, which critics are calling oligarchic multilateralism. It's treating global security like a country club or a corporate board. You pay to play. And just look at who has joined. Argentina, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Hungary.
Now look at who hasn't. That's the glaring omission here, isn't it?
It is. France, Germany, the UK, our traditional NATO allies, the bedrock of European security, are nowhere to be found.
And in fact, Canada's invitation was reportedly rescinded after Mark Carney criticized the fee. This is causing a massive rift in the West.
It's splitting the alliance. You have the Board of Peace members, and then you have the traditional UN and NATO bloc. It feels like a deliberate move to sideline the European powers that have been the most supportive of Ukraine.
It absolutely is. And this board isn't just about Ukraine. That's a key point. They're also managing the post-war Gaza plan. They're calling it the Gazan Riviera.
The Gazan Riviera. You have to be kidding me.
I wish I were. It's a vision of luxury real estate and tourism. The idea is that you can solve these deep-seated political conflicts with massive injections of private equity. It's a worldview that says everyone has a price.
Build enough hotels and the fighting will stop.
That's the logic. But it completely ignores the human reality of these conflicts. You can't just buy your way out of a war of aggression.
And speaking of buying things, we have to mention the Greenland crisis in this context. It seems absurd, but it's connected, right?
It's deeply connected to this friction with Europe. Trump renewed interest in buying Greenland from Denmark when the Danes politely but firmly said, Greenland is not for sale.
The response wasn't diplomacy.
No, it was a threat to slap tariffs on European wine and champagne.
So because Denmark won't sell an island, French vineyards get punished.
Exactly. It shows the transactional nature of this new foreign policy. You have the U.S. threatening economic war on its own European allies while launching a new global security board that excludes them.
It leaves Europe feeling incredibly vulnerable.
Of course. They see the U.S. pivoting away from the Atlantic Alliance and toward a relationship with whoever can pay the $1 billion or offer the best real estate deal.
Which brings us right back to the core issue. Ukraine. If the Board of Peace is the new mechanism, what is actually being negotiated for Ukraine? Because while the bombs are falling, these secret talks are happening in Abu Dhabi.
This is the Abu Dhabi track. It's happening right now. You have U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner meeting with, and this is significant, 5 Russian generals.
Generals, not diplomats.
Correct. When you have generals in the room, you aren't talking about abstract peace. You are drawing lines on a map.
And they're hammering out what they call the Prosperity Agreement.
An $800 billion reconstruction fund for Ukraine.
That is a staggering amount of money. It's the economic carrot, but there's always a stick. What's being asked of Ukraine in exchange for that fund?
The land deal. The reports indicate Russia is demanding Ukraine cede approximately 5,000 square kilometers of the Donbas.
And that's not just empty fields. We're talking about fortified cities like Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. Kramatorsk, that's a fortress city. It's the logistics hub for the entire Eastern Front. If Ukraine gives that up, doesn't the whole defense line in the east just crumble?
It would be a catastrophic blow to Ukraine's defense architecture. You are essentially asking them to hand over the keys to the entire region.
And what's the U.S. proposal to sweeten this bitter pill?
A free economic zone in the Donbas, a demilitarized zone with special tax regimes. The idea is to turn the front line into a business district.
I can hear the skepticism in your voice. And frankly, given Russia's behavior, who can blame you?
Well, history tells us that demilitarized zones in this region tend not to stay demilitarized for very long. President Zelensky is being, very cautious, and rightfully so.
What's he saying?
He called the economic zone idea difficult but fair, but with a massive caveat. Russia has to mirror the withdrawal.
And we know how likely that is.
Exactly. Russia has never voluntarily withdrawn from territory it considers conquered. Zelensky knows that. He has explicitly rejected meeting Putin in Moscow or Belarus. He said it would be absurd.
To meet in the capital of the aggressor.
And he made a very poignant point about these talks. He said, every single Russian strike discredits the peace talks.
That's the reality check, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's hard to negotiate a prosperity agreement when your power grid is being blown up by the person across the table.
It's a cognitive dissonance. On one hand, you have these shiny brochures for a Gazan Riviera or a Donbas Free Economic Zone. On the other, you have minus 30-degree weather and Iskander missiles hitting residential areas.
It just highlights the fundamental flaw in this transactional approach.
It does. You can't treat a war of national survival like a real estate deal. The Russians aren't fighting for tax breaks, they're fighting for conquest.
So why is the U.S. pushing this so hard? Why bypass the UN, alienate Europe, and push for a deal that seems to favor Russia's strategic goals?
I think we have to zoom out to the geopolitical pivot. Remember the Alaska summit back in August of 2025?
Right, the meeting in Anchorage. That was the first time Trump and Putin met face-to-face in this term.
And that established this personal channel. The why behind all of this is China. The Trump administration views Russia and China as natural competitors.
So the grand strategy is a sort of reverse Kissinger.
That's a good way to put it. Instead of opening to China to isolate Russia, like in the 70s, they want to split Russia away from China.
And Ukraine is the pawn on that bigger chessboard.
Yeah.
The administration is willing to sacrifice Ukrainian territory and European unity if it means pulling Putin out of Xi Jinping's orbit.
In this specific strategic view, yes, that's the calculation. The risk, of course, is that this calculation is fatally flawed.
How so?
A frozen conflict in Ukraine benefits Russia enormously. It lets them pause, rearm, and potentially attack again later. And by excluding Europe from these talks, and the EU is completely shut out of the Abu Dhabi room, it leaves the continent incredibly vulnerable.
It sends a message.
It signals to every dictator in the world that borders can be redrawn if you just have enough leverage.
It feels like we are watching the dismantling of the post-World War II order in real time. NATO sidelined, the UN bypassed.
And the fate of democracies decided by whoever writes the biggest check. We are. Zelensky compared this situation to the movie Groundhog Day. You wake up, there are missiles. You hear about a peace plan. You wake up, there are more missiles.
And the U.S. is just pushing for a quick win.
A signed deal, a photo op, a stock market bump. But the reality is a grinding war of attrition. And as Zelensky said, friendship between presidents doesn't stop missiles.
That's a chilling thought. We have a truce that isn't stopping attacks. A board of peace that runs like an exclusive country club.
And secret deals that could redraw the map of Europe without the Europeans even being in the room. And all of this while the Ukrainian people are enduring one of the harshest winters in memory.
The disconnect between the luxury suites in Davos and the frozen, battered streets of Odessa has never been wider.
It's heartbreaking, the gap between the rhetoric of peace and the reality of war.
It really makes you question what peace actually means in this context. Is it just the absence of war, or is it the silence of the victim?
That is the ultimate question. If you buy peace by selling out the sovereignty of a democratic nation to an aggressor, all for an $800 billion investment fund, is that actually peace?
Or is it just a down payment on the next war?
Exactly. Because if aggression is rewarded with land and money, it will not stop at Ukraine.
That is something every single one of us needs to think about. Because the precedent set here won't just apply to Ukraine. It changes the rules for everyone.
It really does.
You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry.
Thanks for tuning in.
If you value this kind of in-depth analysis that cuts through the noise and stands up for the facts, please subscribe to Defense Reports. We are your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.